An approach corridor in contested territory, 0615 hours on a recent winter morning. Clear weather, good visibility, optimal conditions for armored operations. A Russian tank brigade, 78 main battle tanks supported by 2,100 mechanized infantry and artillery units, prepared to advance through a route that had been used successfully multiple times over the previous month. Reconnaissance had cleared the corridor. Engineers had verified the route was mine-free. Intelligence indicated minimal Ukrainian presence. The advance was expected to be routine. 37 minutes later, every tank in the brigade would be destroyed or disabled. 1,923 soldiers would be killed or wounded. The brigade would be combat ineffective, and not a single Ukrainian soldier would have fired a shot. This happened days ago. The minefield remains active. Body recovery continues under extreme danger. The strategic shock is still reverberating through Russian command. This is what occurred during those 37 minutes. Russian military operations in this sector had established patterns over weeks of combat. Supply convoys used specific routes. Tactical movements followed predictable corridors. Tank formations advanced along roads that had been cleared and verified as safe. Ukrainian forces observed these patterns meticulously. Every Russian movement was tracked. Every route was noted. Every predictable behavior was catalogued. And for this particular corridor, Ukrainian combat engineers prepared something unprecedented in scale and lethality. Over 4 consecutive nights, Ukrainian engineer teams infiltrated the corridor and emplaced 2,400 anti-tank mines across 6 kilometers of terrain. The mines weren't placed randomly. They were positioned with careful calculation to create a kill zone from which escape would be impossible. The mines were a combination of types: TM62 Lenin conventional anti-tank mines designed to destroy tracks and immobilize vehicles, PTKM-1R off-route mines that fire explosively formed penetrators capable of defeating side armor, AT-2 mines with magnetic influence fuses that detonate when tanks pass overhead. The minefield was engineered to ensure any vehicle entering would be destroyed, regardless of which path it took. Additionally, Ukrainian forces emplaced anti-personnel mines throughout the corridor. PFM-1 scatterable mines, small devices difficult to detect, were distributed densely. These mines weren't intended to kill outright, but to maim, creating casualties that would slow Russian operations and demoralize units. The minefield was concealed carefully. Mines were buried with minimal surface disturbance. Natural camouflage was preserved. Ground that had been excavated was replaced precisely to avoid aerial detection. From reconnaissance altitude, the corridor appeared unchanged. Russian mine-clearing teams had checked the route 3 days prior. They drove mine-detecting vehicles through the corridor and reported it clear. They didn't detect the mines because the mines hadn't been emplaced yet. Ukrainian engineers installed the minefield after Russian mine clearance operations, knowing Russian doctrine called for periodic clearance checks, but not constant monitoring. At 0615, the Russian tank brigade entered the corridor. Lead elements were a company of 12 T-72B3 tanks, followed by infantry fighting vehicles and supporting units. The formation stretched across 6 kilometers as it advanced through the corridor. At 0622, the first tank detonated a mine. A T-72B3 at the head of the column triggered a TM62M mine positioned directly on the road surface. The mine's 7 kilograms of TNT detonated beneath the left track. The explosion severed the track, damaged road wheels, and immobilized the 40-ton vehicle instantly. The tank crew was not killed, but their vehicle was disabled and blocking the road. The second tank in column attempted to bypass the disabled vehicle. Standard procedure: leave the disabled tank for recovery vehicles and continue the advance. The driver steered right, moving off the paved road onto the shoulder. The shoulder was seeded with additional mines. The tank traveled 3 meters before triggering another TM62M. This explosion damaged the right track assembly. The tank was immobilized. 2 tanks now blocked the corridor. The third tank attempted to bypass both disabled vehicles by moving further off-road. It traveled 7 meters before striking a mine, immobilized, 3 tanks blocking the route within 2 minutes. The following tanks faced impossible choices: continue forward through a minefield, reverse back through vehicles following behind, attempt cross-country movement through unknown terrain. Every option involved crossing ground that might be mined. At 0628, multiple tanks attempted simultaneous maneuvers to find clear paths. 5 tanks maneuvered off-road within 30 seconds. All 5 struck mines. The minefield density was so high that any movement triggered detonations. Radio communications became chaotic. Tank commanders reported mines everywhere. Engineers were requested urgently. Medical evacuation was needed for wounded. Orders were contradictory: advance, halt, reverse, hold position. The brigade commander, positioned in a command vehicle near the column center, attempted to assess the situation. His vehicle hadn't entered the minefield yet, but forward elements were being systematically disabled. He ordered the advance halted and engineers forward to clear routes. Engineer vehicles began moving forward at 0633. These specialized vehicles equipped with mine plows and rollers were designed to clear paths through minefields. They advanced toward the disabled tanks to begin clearance operations. Ukrainian forces had anticipated this response. Engineer vehicles were priority targets. As the engineer vehicles entered the minefield, Ukrainian artillery commenced firing. Not against the engineer vehicles directly, but against the surrounding area to prevent infantry from supporting mine-clearing operations. High explosive rounds detonated among Russian positions, forcing infantry to take cover and preventing them from providing security for engineers. The engineer vehicles attempted to clear lanes. The first vehicle activated its mine plow and began pushing forward. It cleared 2 mines successfully before striking a PTKM-1R off-route mine. The explosively formed penetrator struck the vehicle's side armor, penetrated and disabled the engineer vehicle. Additional engineer vehicles attempted clearance. All encountered the same result. The minefield was too dense, too sophisticated, and covered by artillery fire. Engineer operations couldn't proceed under these conditions. By 0640, 23 tanks were disabled by mines. None had been destroyed. The mines were designed for mobility kills, not catastrophic destruction. But immobilized tanks were useless for operations and required recovery. Russian tank crews faced a decision: remain in disabled vehicles awaiting recovery, or evacuate and take cover. Many crews chose to evacuate. As they dismounted, they encountered anti-personnel mines. A tank crew evacuating their disabled T-90M at 0643 stepped directly into an area seeded with PFM-1 mines. The first crew member to exit the turret stepped on a mine. The small anti-personnel mine detonated, severing his foot. He collapsed. The second crew member, attempting to assist, stepped on another mine. The third crew member remained in the tank, afraid to exit. This scenario repeated across the minefield. Soldiers evacuating vehicles encountered anti-personnel mines. Casualties mounted rapidly. Screams and calls for medics filled radio channels. Medical personnel attempting to reach wounded soldiers triggered additional mines. A medical team moving forward to assist casualties at 0648 encountered PFM-1 mines. 2 medics were wounded. The team withdrew, unable to reach the casualties they were trying to save. The brigade commander ordered general halt at 0650. All units were to stop movement immediately. No vehicles were to maneuver. No personnel were to dismount unless absolutely necessary. The situation was assessed as catastrophic and required higher command guidance. Higher command ordered continued advance at 0653. The minefield had to be cleared. The mission had to continue. Engineers were to resume clearance operations. The brigade was to push through regardless of losses. This order was tactically impossible to execute. The minefield was too extensive. Engineer capability was inadequate. Artillery fire prevented effective operations. casualties were mounting without corresponding progress. Russian tank commanders, desperate to escape the kill zone, began attempting individual maneuvers at 0657. Several tanks tried to reverse out of the minefield along their entry routes. Reversing through a minefield is exceptionally dangerous because mines don't discriminate based on direction of travel. A T-72B3 attempting to reverse at 0700 triggered a mine beneath its rear hull. The explosion damaged the engine compartment, causing fuel fires. The crew evacuated successfully, but the tank burned, creating a smoke column visible for kilometers. Other tanks attempting cross-country movement to escape the corridor triggered additional mines. Every maneuver resulted in additional casualties. The minefield had been engineered to ensure that any movement led to mine detonations. By 0715, 41 tanks were disabled. Casualty reports indicated over 300 soldiers wounded, many seriously. Medical evacuation helicopters were requested, but couldn't land safely in an active minefield under artillery fire. Ukrainian drone operators orbited overhead, filming the catastrophe. The footage showed tanks scattered across the corridor, some burning, others immobilized. Soldiers taking cover, medics treating wounded in exposed positions. The entire brigade paralyzed in a 6-kilometer kill zone. At 0723, a Russian ammunition truck in the column struck a mine. The explosion detonated the truck's cargo of artillery ammunition. The resulting blast created a fireball that engulfed nearby vehicles and soldiers. 47 soldiers were killed instantly. The explosion was so violent it triggered sympathetic detonations in other ammunition carriers. The brigade was disintegrating, command structure was fragmenting, units were scattered and pinned down, casualties overwhelmed medical capability, the mission was impossible. Higher command finally authorized withdrawal at 0735. All units were to extract from the minefield immediately. Disabled vehicles were to be abandoned. Wounded who could move were to be evacuated. Those too severely injured to move would be recovered later. The withdrawal was nearly as costly as the advance. Units attempting to reverse through the minefield triggered additional mines. Soldiers moving on foot encountered anti-personnel mines. The extraction took 27 minutes and resulted in additional casualties. By 0752, surviving elements of the brigade had withdrawn from the minefield. Behind them remained 78 disabled tanks, 1,923 casualties, including 611 killed, hundreds of wounded soldiers requiring immediate medical treatment, millions of dollars in destroyed equipment. Ukrainian forces had not fired a single shot from small arms or direct fire weapons. The entire catastrophe was created by mines and supporting artillery fires. The engagement was pure engineering warfare. Prepare the battlefield, wait for the enemy to enter, and let the mines do the killing. The minefield remained active and dangerous. Russian recovery operations couldn't begin until the mines were cleared. But clearing the minefield required engineer assets that had themselves been destroyed in the minefield. The situation was circular and unsolvable. Casualty figures were devastating. 611 soldiers confirmed killed, many by anti-personnel mines while attempting to evacuate disabled vehicles. 1,312 wounded, ranging from minor injuries to critical trauma requiring immediate surgery. The brigade's combat strength was reduced from 2,100 to fewer than 200 effective soldiers. Equipment losses exceeded $624 million. 78 tanks at approximately $8 million average, $624 million. Infantry fighting vehicles, artillery pieces, engineer vehicles, command vehicles, logistics trucks, all abandoned in the minefield, unable to be recovered safely. But the strategic impact exceeded direct losses. The corridor had been a critical logistics route. Its closure forced Russian forces to find alternative routes, adding hours to supply times. Offensive operations planned for this sector were cancelled due to the brigade's destruction. The psychological impact was severe. Russian soldiers in other units learned that routes verified as mine-free could become death traps overnight. Trust in engineer clearance operations was shattered. Troops became hesitant to advance through any terrain, fearing invisible mines. Russian military analysts posted scathing assessments. One prominent channel wrote, "This is criminal negligence. We used the same route repeatedly, allowing enemies to observe our patterns and prepare a trap. We sent a tank brigade into a minefield and lost everything without firing a shot. This is defeat through stupidity." Ukrainian engineering doctrine demonstrated sophisticated understanding of enemy patterns and patience to exploit them. Observing Russian route usage, waiting for mine clearance operations to complete, installing the minefield after clearance checks, ensuring the trap was set perfectly before the enemy entered. The economic efficiency was extraordinary. 2,400 mines costing approximately $2 million total destroyed $624 million in equipment. The cost-exchange ratio favored Ukraine by more than 300 to 1. The tactical execution was elegant. No complex fires coordination, no risky close combat. Simply prepare a kill zone and wait for the enemy to enter. The mines did the work autonomously, requiring no Ukrainian presence after emplacement. Russian doctrine required immediate revision. Route clearance procedures were inadequate. Mine detection equipment was insufficient. Infantry engineer coordination was poor. The entire approach to movement through contested terrain had been proven fatally flawed. For Ukrainian forces, the operation validated engineering-centric warfare, demonstrating ability to destroy enemy formations without direct combat engagement, provided options for future operations against numerically superior forces. The minefield corridor remains active days later. Russian forces haven't attempted recovery of disabled vehicles. The terrain is too dangerous. Mines remain active. Bodies of soldiers killed in the minefield remain unrecovered. The numbers define the disaster. 78 tanks disabled, 1,923 casualties, 611 dead, 37 minutes from first detonation to general withdrawal order, 0 Ukrainian casualties. This is engineering warfare, where preparation defeats strength, where patience creates catastrophe, where $2 million in mines destroys $600 million in equipment. The corridor is closed, the tanks rust in the minefield, the bodies await recovery teams that cannot safely enter, and Russian forces learn that predictability is fatal, that patterns become traps, that the same route used successfully yesterday might be a graveyard today. Welcome to warfare, where engineers are more lethal than artillery, where invisible mines destroy armored brigades, where the battlefield is prepared in advance and enemies simply drive into their own destruction.